Okie doke, it's 7 p.m. It's time to get started. We like to start on time. Like to welcome everyone here tonight. This is a program that Jim LeDuc started 3 or 4 years ago, and it's been quite successful. We've got a couple of really good speakers tonight, but before we get to that, got a little housekeeping to do. If you enjoyed the food tonight, give Teresa, Ann, and Judy a big hand. They're a little bashful and they're cleaning up, but somebody paid for it. If you look on the table, you'll find this little flyer, and the sponsors tonight were Joe and Sheila Fanistil sitting back there, Elliott Insurance and Real Estate, Larry Fitzmorris, and our local sheriff, Jerry Montaigne, and his wife, Janice, and then Culligan. So let's give all the sponsors a big hand. They paid for your meal. If you're a veteran, they paid for your drinks. Most everybody knows who I am because I've been here a long time, but we've got some out-of-town guests. I'm Dan Hervey. I'm the commander this year, but I've been in seeing this thing ever since we started. We've got 2 Air Force fellows tonight, and they're going to tell their stories. The first one we put on here is the second one listed, Raymond Jones. Now, he spent time in the Air Force, then he turned around and spent time in the Army. I think it was Army Reserve maybe. But Dennis is going to kind of do like he does. He's going to ask him questions, and we'll see what kind of tales we can get here.
It ain't going to be good.
It's not going to be good. All right. Okay. And I see that Raymond's wearing a American Legion cap from Hutchinson, so we're glad for that. And I think we'll find our other speakers wearing one. He's not wearing it, but he belongs to the Legion post in Sterling.
Yeah,
Okay.
This is Raymond Jones. In about 3 weeks, I'll be celebrating the 60 years out of Lenora High School. It's north.
He did graduate. He didn't say he got out of high school.
North and west from here, and 15 weeks out of 15 months out of high school, I got a nephew. Now here I go again. I'm the youngest of 11. My second brother, older than me, was Air Force. And when he got out, he went to work, construction work in Norton, Kansas. And he came in one day, and a friend of mine was down at the house visiting with me. And he said, if you guys don't want to go to the Army, you better get in the Air Force. So we both headed for Hayes, signed up, and that started our Air Force career. So.
Let me get started here a little bit. I heard this guy before I ever seen him. He knows what I'm talking about because Hutchinson Junior College has a sports arena over there, and we used to go in there. My wife and I'd go watch play basketball, and there was this guy sitting up behind us. They go, "Come on, ref, knock it off. You're blind." Blah blah blah. That's how I learned to know him. Believe it or not, that's true. That's honest truth. So anyhow, he is from Hutchinson, and we had a little trouble trying to get hold of him because did I give you the wrong? You gave me the wrong phone number, didn't you?
I gave you one phone number, and I had 2 phones.
One didn't work. So anyhow, I had to look him up. I found his address, and I had to drive out. It was just south of by the Reno County landfill, and I found his house. And when I drove in, he knew right away who I was. So it was kind of an interesting deal there. So we got the phone number straightened out, and we got it. He's called me about 3 times to make sure that everything is going to be like he thought it was going to be. So it's not. So anyhow, I'm going to ask you a couple of questions. I think there's maybe 10, maybe not quite.
That's good.
Okay, where'd you grow up at, first of all?
I was born in the hospital in Norton, Kansas. I'm out of 11 kids, I'm the only one that was ever born in a hospital.
Were you the last one at the table to eat?
and I got the short end of the stick.
Okay. Where do you live now? You live in Hutch, right, or by Hutch?
In just west of Hutchinson, right, like it's right next to the landfill on the west side of town.
Where did you work and where did you retire from? We kind of talked about this earlier to get you jarred up.
I started out in the Air Force, switched over to the Army, and went through 11 and a half years in the Army. I ended up 17 and a half years total military. And I was on orders to go back to Germany for the third time, which I was looking for very much because I loved over 7.5 years I'd already spent over there. And one thing come to another, and he said, no, we can't let you do that. Says, there might be a time coming when you have to hear everything, and I've got inner ear damage. I got hearing aids in both ears. And he said, so you're still going to get your retirement, but we're not going to let you go back to Germany. So that's where it got started. Came back home, and my brother, just older than me, lived in Sterling. And somewhere down the road, I got connected with him, and he got me connected with his wife, which was my sister-in-law now. And she passed away 2 years ago. But we all went around and they introduced me to this beautiful young lady that was a school teacher in Hutchinson, been there forever. She taught school for 29 years, mainly with special needs kids. And she worked herself daylight to dark for those kids. And we lost her 3.5 years ago, too. So I've got her oldest daughter is my daughter, is Stephanie Norquist, and she's following in her mother's footsteps. She's working with special needs kids, too. Only she's not a teacher. She's a paraprofessional, but she's just as good as they were. But that's how I got into the teaching. Somewhere down the line, I was telling you earlier, when I got out of the Air Force, I went to barber school. And I got done with my 39 weeks of barber training. I went back to Lenore and bought my barber shop in Lenore. Wrong. At that time, nobody was high school kids was getting haircuts, and the farmers got a haircut maybe once a month if lucky. So, and then a hometown recruiter, lo and behold, showed up and came into the barber shop, and I did have a friend in the barber chair, and he said, "Why don't you guys let me put you back in the military?" And then but Paul had never been in the military, so he said, "I ain't never been there," but he said, if Spanky wants to go, I'll go. And that's me, Spanky.
I didn't know that. Now I do.
And the barber shop before they tore it down was Spanky's barber shop. They had it on the front window. But it's gone now.
That fits you, you know. It really does.
It's gone now.
Got a couple of questions. We were talking earlier, and we kind of reminisced basic training and stuff, and you know, everybody enjoyed it. I don't know if everybody remembers that, but getting off that bus in the dark and getting screamed at, you know, and it was not fun at all. So we'll go ahead and go ahead and explain how he got in trouble right when he started.
This is we're switching back to Air Force time now.
The good times.
We got into Lackland and San Antonio. Their airport was about midnight, and they shoved us outside, pushed us into a bus, and headed out to Lackland. When we got out to Lackland, there was this mean-looking guy with a funny-looking hat on, standing outside telling me I was everything but a human being. And we all went through that. And finally, when they marched us all in and told us to get a shower and get in bed. That was my initiation into the Air Force.
Do you remember your first night in basic training? Did you sleep well?
No, no.
Nobody did on that one. That's for sure.
But sleep was something very far and away until you get ready to get out of basic. You couldn't get any rest or anything else as long as you're in basic. But once you started out into your AIT,
You slept better, right?
you slept better.
You remember your drill sergeant's name?
Tech Sergeant Hollingsworth. And
He's a lovely guy,
and his understudy was Airman First Class Hatter. And I'd like to know if they were still around, because once we got out of the training schedule, they're two of the swellest, most fun guys you ever met in your life. But I thought for a while they was going to kill us.
You remember marching? Remember when we had to march all the time?
Yes. Oh.
I knew that'd bring up something.
And me being bow-legged, clump, clump, clump. The only thing good about being bow-legged is they didn't put me in parades.
That was interesting, wasn't it?
That was very interesting. Well, I kind of thought it was, once I found out I wasn't going to have to go out and chase around in the sunshine, I could handle it.
Did you ever pull KP?
KP was a good thing in the Air Force, especially if you got to hospital, because the hospital always had the best cooks, the best food, and you didn't have to do dishes. So, but other than that, when you were in training, there was potato peeling and dishwashing and more dishwashing and more dishwashing.
So back to the potato peeler. Did they have one of those where you dump the potatoes in and you better get them out quick?
Knife. A paring knife.
Oh, you had that? We had one where you dumped the potatoes in there and then you had someone else pick them out before they looked like golf balls.
No, I don't think they even had one of those back then.
Did you ever fail an inspection?
Constantly.
Tell me about that. What did you do wrong?
Well, again, I could never get everything straight. And whenever I got tied up in something, I was in a bigger mess than I was to start with. But it was a time well worth. It's come way back for a long time, and I want to thank this gentleman here for running into me and watching basketball with me and offered me the chance to come in and visit with you. Military people, Air Force, Army, whatever. I thank the good Lord for what we've got, and ask that they thank you for asking me to come in, and you got more questions? I'd like to.
Oh, I got a lot more.
Let's hear it.
Oh yeah, we've just begun, man. Did you ever get? Let's see what I got there. Did you ever get in trouble?
Nothing that I couldn't
What's your
handle.
definition of trouble? We start with that first.
What I did didn't get caught.
Well, that's not trouble then. When you get caught, that's trouble.
But no,
don't lie now. You know
I never had any trouble in the military.
You didn't?
No, there was plenty of things going wrong, but it's not something you couldn't get out of.
You remember when you got the mail?
When it showed up.
Yep.
They always, Air Force, you had mail calls same time every day, but with the Army, you never knew where mail call was going to be, when you was going to get it, and what time you was going to get it, and if you was going to get it.
I remember one time we had mail call, and this poor kid's mother sent him a dozen cookies. That did not go over well at all, because we had to stand and watch him eat a dozen cookies. He is coughing up. Cookies were coming out of his mouth, and everybody said, "Hurry up, we got to get this game over with." So, did you ever have any strange people in your unit?
We had one, the one I told you about earlier. He was sitting there, and he wouldn't get out of bed to start with. So they said, "Oh, we'll just leave him." And then he wouldn't get up for breakfast. And he said, "What?" Finally, Tech Sergeant Hollingsworth came in and says, "Airman, what's wrong with you?" "I'm waiting to go home."
Yep.
And he says, "Pack your bags, you're going home." And he did. He was gone. That was only 3 days into the Air Force, and he was gone.
That happens. Where were your duty locations? Talk about Germany a little bit. Where you went, what you did. He said he didn't like London.
I had a chance to fly into London for a week, and I have yet to figure out what I went there for. You got Ireland, you got Scotland, you got all the beautiful things you could do, and you go to London. But no, I enjoyed Europe very much. Austria and Amsterdam, you name it, all the good places. And the tulip. I'm a crazy guy, but I love tulips. And they got millions and millions of tulips in Holland, and you can spend I will go back at least once during the holiday season, tulip season. I go every 7 years. I was there, and I went 7 times to the Hollands, to the tulips. But yes, Europe was great, but I've always asked myself, why London? How come I didn't go to Holland? And I did go to Holland, but I didn't go to Scotland, Ireland, and all these other beautiful places you see on TV now. We didn't go, so there was a...
Did you make some good friends?
Yeah, very good friends. There's one, Longford, Kansas, somewhere up in north and west, south, north and east of here.
That away.
Yeah. I was a ground-to-air telephone and teletype operator. He was my repairman. And his uncle was a full-bird pilot flying out of Wiesbaden, Germany. So that's how we got into, they flew us into London and came by and picked it up and brought us back. But that way, we got a lot of free rides. But there wasn't nothing that I would do again if I had to. If I had to do it over again, I'd go to Holland, then I'd jump over London to Ireland and ever. So.
Are you glad you joined the military?
I'm glad I spent 17 and a half years, best time of my life. And
learned a lot.
Learned a lot, earned a lot, and like I say, it's just, I have had 2 sisters. One of them grew up, and one was passed away when she was 5 years old. And I had 8 brothers. Every one of us, and my dad, God rest his soul, he was a World War I veteran. And all my other brothers, except one, the one that's just 2 years older than me, tried 3 times to get into the service. And they finally told him, says, "Mr. Jones, you're going to have to quit. So we can't use you, and you're just taking up our time. And
One more question. What would you tell someone that's thinking of joining the military?
if you're mature enough, old enough, and smart enough, go for it.
Now, the mature part, they kind of increase that a little bit when you go to basic training, don't they?
Oh, you're everything but a human being when you get out. When you got off of that bus at Lackland, you're everything but a human being.
Anybody got any questions? You know, we were talking earlier about the fact that a lot of people he didn't get a chance to talk to some of his family and know what. You know, they didn't talk about it. He simply said, you know, when you came back home, nothing was said. That was it. You know, now we're kind of coming back and trying to get people to, you know, pass their history on to their family so they got, you know, something that they can relate to. There was a question back there.
What year did you go into the service? What year did you enlist?
I went in 65, March of 65. And I got out, I got Christmas out in 69. And I went back on, not duty, but reserve time after the 28th day of March 1971.
Which days did you have basic training? Do you remember how many days you had basic training?
6 weeks.
You had 6 weeks.
At Lackland, 6 weeks at Lackland, and then we had one of our things that we had a lot of. We had layovers waiting on orders. So when I was waiting from Lackland to go to Shepherd from a ground air to radio, telephone, and teletype school, I didn't do not much of anything except pick up rocks.
Danny.
Did you go through Army boot camp too, or did they tell you that?
Yes, sir. When I sold my barbershop and moved out on the hometown recruiter came in on Thursday. I was in Fort Ord, California, to go to basic training on the following Tuesday. And that was one of the saddest, sorriest point I've ever got into in my life. I damn near froze to death, thinking I was going to see the sun and get warm in California. But that was the worst part. There's two things that if I had to do it over again, I'd run. Fort Ord, California, and Fort Sill, Oklahoma. Other than that, military was fantastic, and I'd tell everybody to do it again if you get that opportunity.
Was boot camp easier as an E4 than it was an E1?
I had to go back to E2 to take boot camp again.
What didn't you learn the first time?
Well, Army Air Force boot camp was different.
Which was worse?
Oh, Army Air Force didn't really. They did book learning, a lot of book learning, and then the ground to air telephone and teletype. I had a lot of work on machines and things. I had to learn to do that, and answer telephone switchboards. You name it, we did it. But other than that, the Army. They look for ways to freeze you to death.
You did the same thing in both Air Force and Army?
No, absolutely not. The Army never knew what real physical training like the Air Force was. Air Force, you had your they did have bivouac, but you had your trails and tracks and up and down and climbing ropes and things like that. In the Army, you didn't have to do any of that. But now I think you do.
Okay. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Raymond. Appreciate you coming over and sharing with us. Before we bring up our next speaker, I want to tell you a little bit in advance who we've got lined up for next month. June, we've got Jim Leach is going to tell his story again. He's got some other things to tell. You know how it is. After we're done, we think, well, I should have said. So Jim will be on, and then we've got our very own Elsa Boston going to tell her story, which she doesn't like to do much anymore, but it's a tearjerker. Elsa grew up in Germany. Her dad was conscripted into the German army during World War II. Mom and the kids were left on their own. Germany went to Russia. Later, Russia come across Germany, and when Russia come across Germany, all the civilians were rounded up. She ended up spending 2.5 years after the war in a Russian concentration camp. So you'll want to bring your friends to hear her story. She doesn't tell it very often. And fortunately, Mark's going to get it recorded this time. She spoke at the Memorial Day service a few years ago, and it was a wonderful speech.